hearing of the Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriations Subcommittee is now called to order. The purpose of this hearing is to receive testimony from the representatives of the Office of the Secretary of Defense and the military services regarding their FY2023 military construction and family housing budget requests. This year, with the addition of a witness from the Space Force, our hearing will consist of two panels. Our first panel includes witnesses from the Office of the Secretary of Defense, the Navy, and the Marine Corps. The second panel will consist of witnesses from the Army, the Air Force, and the Space Force. I'd like to say thank you to our first panel of witnesses for being here today. From OSD, Mr. Paul Cramer, performing the duties of Assistant Secretary of Defense for Energy, Installations, and Environment. From the Navy, Vice Admiral Ricky Williamson, Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Fleet Readiness and Logistics, and Marine Corps Lieutenant General Edward Banta, Deputy Commandant for Installations and Logistics. This year, the department has sent over a budget request of $12.15 billion for the military construction and family housing accounts, a 23% increase over last year's request. It is also the highest request level since fiscal year 2012. That said, the department has relied on and apparently will continue to look towards congressional increases year over year to get at the true MILCON funding needs. While it is clear more needs to be done, I am encouraged to see DoD continuing to increase its request. This year's request includes a significant investment in several major infrastructure programs. The Navy is asking for nearly $1.2 billion for 3 construction projects and $88 million in design funding, supporting the Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Program. In recent years, this committee has been supportive of the Navy's effort to overhaul our 4 public shipyards, and we will continue to keep a close eye on the program. The Marine Corps has identified $330 million to continue the construction of a new base on Guam. The Air Force request addresses several new missions and includes over $200 million for projects supporting B-21 bed down and $444 million in funding for the ground-based strategic deterrent infrastructure. We know that each of these programs will require many years of dedicated funding. I am pleased that the request includes $553 million for the Energy Resilience and Conservation Investment Program, or ERSIP, the highest amount since the creation of the program. The request underscores this administration's commitment to investing in critical energy resilience projects and a clear understanding of their tie to readiness. I will also note that the Future Years Defense Program shows continued increases to the ERSIP account year over year. Given the clear demand for and increased complexity and cost of projects, I expect the department to hold to that plan. I've been vocal about the need for the United States to embrace and accelerate electrification, and I am encouraged by the Army's commitment to install a microgrid on every installation by 2035. While each service and indeed installation is unique in its energy needs, I expect that each of you is looking closely at how to build a more resilient, efficient, and clean energy and water, for that matter, systems. I look forward to hearing from you on that subject today. The request also includes significant investments in our overseas posture. For design and construction of infrastructure supporting the European Deterrence Initiative, the request provides $430 million. The administration also asked for over $1.2 billion for the Pacific Deterrence Initiative. At the same time, the need for recapitalization of existing facilities continues to grow. This year, we received unfunded priority lists from the services and defense-wide agencies that totaled nearly $4 billion. Many of the projects that were pushed out of the budget support enduring missions and quality of life investments, such as construction of new troop and family housing, child development centers, and critical training and maintenance infrastructure. We continue to see facilities age, often held together by short-term maintenance fixes, while the complexity of our infrastructure grows and global market volatility drives up costs. The vulnerability of this aging infrastructure to climate, cyber, and energy threats also cannot be understated. As such, I must note that the request once again clearly prioritizes new mission infrastructure over current mission and existing facility recapitalization. And I look forward to hearing about the installation investment strategies across the department. With that, I will thank our witnesses again for being here today, and I'll turn things over to Ranking Member Bozeman for his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I also would like to extend a warm welcome to our witnesses here today, and just thank you for you and the audience. You know, you look out and see all of these uniforms. Just thank you for your service to our country in so many different ways. It's greatly appreciated. I was pleasantly surprised to see this year's budget request at $12.2 billion, which is an increase over last year's request of $9.8 billion. It's one of the highest MILCON requests in years, but it's also an 18% decrease from the fiscal year 2022 enacted level of 14.9. The fiscal year 2022 bill included unprecedented funding levels, which was necessary as the MILCON portfolio is routinely underfunded and has been taking on increasing levels of risk for years. Unfortunately, this trend doesn't seem to be changing, as this year's request remains only 1.5% of the total DoD budget. I'm also concerned about multiple aspects of this year's budget that further compound the challenges presented to MILCON and quickly dilute this year's increased request. Further, I'd like to address increments. Not that long ago, $100 million was an expensive price tag, and increments were the exception rather than the rule. Now we're looking at projects that exceed $1 billion with increments becoming a common way of doing business. Nearly one-third of this year's request, $3.5 billion, is for 27 incremented projects, and we know more will be added in future requests. We've known for years that more complex and large-scale projects would start to take up a greater share of the budget, but without corresponding top-line increases, an already constrained budget is squeezed even further to accommodate increments for these expensive projects. Another challenge is the impact of inflation and supply chain issues on the construction market and the corresponding increased cost of projects. One of the challenges in MILCON is the delay between budget development and project execution, with the current environment exacerbating this issue greatly. I'm concerned about market volatility, supply chain disruptions, worker shortages, the cost of fuel, unprecedented increases in material cost, and record inflation, and how these impact the projects in this budget, as well as projects currently in execution. I'd like to know what the department is doing to address these issues and incorporate these variables into budget estimates and project execution. I know that's a big task. We've already been notified of projects in this request whose costs are outdated, which doesn't bode well for the health of the program. I look forward to working with the department to address these issues and continue the work needed to ensure a successful MILCON program. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Bozeman. We will now proceed with witness statements, starting with Mr. Cramer, then Admiral Williamson, and finishing with General Banta. Mr. Cramer, you're recognized for your opening statement, and your full written testimony will be included in the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member Bozeman, distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to present the President's fiscal 2023 budget request for the Department's energy, insulation, and environment programs. While my full written statement has been submitted for the record, I will highlight a few areas. Our installations remain one of our primary weapon systems, but the stark reality is that we must ensure that our installations are not only postured to support the Joint Force, but they are resilient against the full range of natural and man-made threats. Our 2023 budget request supports our efforts to address mission requirements, ensure service members have a safe place to live and work, and also addresses resilience challenges. We requested $29.2 billion for military construction and sustainment, restoration, modernization funding for our facilities to address critical mission requirements and life, health, safety concerns within the current fiscal environment. This funding will be used to replace, restore, and modernize enduring facilities to enhance their resilience to climate events and promotes elimination of excess and obsolete facilities. The department is also addressing a range of technical, operational, and policy initiatives to enhance the use of energy in warfighting. Our $1.9 billion request for installation energy resilience and energy conservation initiatives will ensure our energy supplies and methods of supply are resilient, sustainable, and affordable. The backbone of these efforts is the Energy Resilience and Conservation Investment Program, which provides a full range of projects and technologies, but will increase focus on building cybersecurity, microgrids that incorporate energy generation and power storage technologies. Our request is for this vital program is $553 million, nearly double our FY2022 request, and reflects the increased planning and design work required for the more complex projects in the program. A key focus of this year's budget request is addressing climate change. The changing climate will continue to amplify operational demands on the force, degrade installation and infrastructure, increase health risks to our service members, and require modification to much of our existing and planned equipment. Extreme weather events are already costing billions of dollars, and those costs are likely to increase. Our resilience investments are guided by the Department of Defense Climate Adaptation Plan, which provides a roadmap for DoD activities and investments to enable operations to continue under changing conditions while preserving operational capability and enhancing the natural and man-made systems essential for the department's success. We are also committed to protecting the quality of life of our personnel and their families. Our primary focus here is to ensure access to safe, high-quality, affordable family and unaccompanied housing. Our budget includes $1.9 billion to support our worldwide non-privatized family housing inventory, which includes more than 34,000 government-owned and 5,800 leased units. With regard to privatized housing, the department continues to prioritize actions that improve the tenant experience and rebuild tenant trust. Our initial phase was predominantly focused on implementing the MHBI Tenant Bill of Rights and the NDA provisions embedded within those rights. The department will now ensure the oversight measures that have been put into place are being put into action at each of our installations. We appreciate Congress and the support you've given us in the FY22 budget, and we appreciate your continued support as we work together to provide the best possible support for soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians. I look forward to your questions.
Chairman Heinrich, Ranking Member Bozeman, and distinguished members of the committee. In conjunction with the other members of the panel, I appreciate the opportunity to provide an update on the quality and resilience of our Navy installations. On behalf of our sailors and their families, thank you for your continued support of the Navy, its military construction program, and our 71 installations around the world, which enable us to strengthen readiness and to support delivery of new and more lethal platforms. Additionally, thank you for your ongoing focus on the Navy's quality of life programs, which are critical to the overall success of our Navy. In December of last year, the Chief of Naval Operations issued a call to action for every Navy leader to apply a set of Navy-proven leadership and problem-solving best practices that empower our people to achieve exceptional performance. We have embraced this call because this is how we have always conducted our business. Constantly self-assessing as part of an effort to get real and self-correcting our discrepancies to get better. To meet the challenges of strategic competition and evolving theater environment, we must enable global logistics, resilient shore infrastructure, and be honest about our current performance. Maintaining our advantage at sea requires transformational change ashore to support and sustain the fleet of the future. We recently released the Naval Global Strategy Ashore, which is the Navy's strategic direction for the Navy shore enterprise, aligned with the National Defense Strategy. Our Navy requires shore platforms to be capable of supporting full-spectrum, multi-domain conflicts with near-peer competitors, while also protecting against, responding to, and recovering from attacks or disruptions intended to degrade operations. This strategy provides a roadmap for identifying and resourcing all shore operations, activities, and investments, enabling fleet warfighting capabilities that are aligned to the CNO's navigation plan. Navy installations located in the United States and around the world are essential shore platforms from which naval forces train, deploy, and maintain forward presence to enable geographic combatant commanders to meet operational requirements. A modernized and ready organic industrial base is a vital component of readiness. The Navy is leading the efforts to take an enterprise-wide approach to optimize infrastructure at the shipyards, depots, and logistics complexes that repair and modernize our ships, submarines, and aircraft. The Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Program, SIOP, is a critical program to prepare the nation's 4 public shipyards to meet the further needs of the Navy's nuclear-powered submarine and aircraft carrier force. Funding applied to our installations also supports climate resilience, which is an important component of installation readiness. The Navy works to ensure installations and infrastructure are resilient to a range of challenges, including extreme weather. It is a privilege to testify before the committee today, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Chairman Heinrich, Ranking Member Bozeman, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the Marine Corps' FY23 military construction budget request today. First, I'd like to thank you for the funding of last year's budget request and our unfunded priorities list. That funding, which totaled over $2 billion, accelerates the Commandant's Force Design Initiative, supports quality of life projects, and invests in the Marine Corps' ability to fulfill its Title X obligations now and in the future. Our installations play a key role in meeting the challenges facing our nation. The Marine Corps' overseas installations are especially critical as advanced naval bases in support of naval and joint operations. We need modernized infrastructure that is resilient against threats ranging from kinetic attack to cybersecurity breaches to damage from extreme weather. To meet these challenges, the Marine Corps has requested over $1.2 billion for military construction projects in FY23. This year's request has a broad focus and includes projects that invest in several key areas, including life, health, and safety issues, quality of life projects, and infrastructure support for new platforms. Over half of this request is focused on the Pacific, including 4 projects on Guam that will help posture the 22,000 Marines located west of the international date line in a fighting stance. The quality of life of our Marine sailors and their families is integral to the readiness and effectiveness of our force. A new child development center at Marine Corps Air Station Miramar will be complete this summer, and 3 more projects are planned in the FIDA. The Marine Corps is in the process of renovating 12 barracks in FY22, and we plan to renovate 15 more in FY23, which will improve the lives of approximately 4,000 Marines. Last year, the Marine Corps' focus on family housing included implementation of the remaining provision of the Tenants' Bill of Rights. The Marine Corps continues to work with its housing partners and the other services to ensure that our housing is safe and meets the needs of our residents. This year, we plan to invest over $230 million in family housing construction and operations, including building family housing units in Guam. The Marine Corps strives to invest in resilient installations that enable operational readiness. Recent infrastructure investments include projects that reduce our reliance on fossil fuels and off-base energy grids. For example, Marine Corps Logistics Base Albany is the first Marine Corps net zero installation. The base generated more power through green energy sources than it consumed in calendar year 2021 and provided about 8 megawatts back to the local grid. The Marine Corps has also invested in microgrids at 5 installations that can power mission essential functions for more than 2 weeks, ensuring continuity of operations. Finally, the Marine Corps is investing in the modernization of its organic industrial base. These projects optimize existing facilities, construct new facilities, and improve workflow processes and productivity at the Marine Corps' 2 depots. The Marine Corps is currently undergoing a significant transition in how it is organized, trained, and equipped to meet current and evolving threats from peer adversaries. Our operational capabilities are adapting to meet threat changes, and we need to invest in next-generation infrastructure to match our evolving capabilities. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today and for your oversight, input, and support as we determine the infrastructure requirements that will best position the Marine Corps for mission accomplishment. I look forward to working with you to sustain our warfighting capability and the readiness of our power projection platforms. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, General. We're going to take a brief recess while the 2 of us go and vote, and then we'll come back and start 5-minute round questions. Call this hearing back to order and start standard 5-minute rounds. I will begin by recognizing myself, and then we'll go to Senator Bozeman and trade it back and forth. Mr. Cramer, I mentioned in my opening statement that I was encouraged by the URSIP request in this budget, and of particular interest is the the increase in planning and design funding, which should help build out the projects that are ready to execute in the coming years. It's also my understanding that the ERSIP program is undergoing some reforms to improve planning and execution. Can you talk a little bit about the need for significant planning and design requests and how the department is improving how it identifies requirements as well as how it develops and executes ERSIP projects?
Yes, Senator, thanks for that question. Yeah, so it's so ERSIP has a long history of getting to where we're at today. It used to be a program that was lump sum funded, and we developed the projects, and the projects would then take 4 plus 5 years in order to actually get under contract and executed. In a lot of cases, the projects would fall off, and so over the years, we've been trying to get ERSIP to look more like the MILCON process, where we have a FYDP. So this year is one of the first years we're actually going to see that effectuated, because we've got the leadership commitment to fund the P&D. So the $200+ million is a surge that's going to allow us to get more projects to that 35% design mark so that we can get projects awarded in the year of appropriation. I think that's where you'll see where the inflation, cost of living growth eats away at our ability to do projects, because we're just not, quite frankly, ready. And so what the surge in P&D is going to allow us to do is build a FYDP for ERSIP projects, and we've done the notification, so you can see some of that types really going after the microgrids that are going to make a difference on the installations. So without the P&D, we're not going to be able to then get the energy projects that we need in the time that we need it, and that's more to the left, not to the right. So we're really going to rely on that P&D to get an ERSIP FYDP, and I'll let my two colleagues answer if they want.
Admiral?
Yes, sir. We're very excited about ERSIP, particularly from improving our theater posture. We have $133 million right now going in for 8 projects. A large portion of those are in Guam. In addition to that, keeping the operational output and the resilience of our bases, SIOP, ERSIP fits very nicely into that as well. Norfolk Naval Shipyard, we're looking at a project there. Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, the same. In addition to that, we also are taking a look at controls. One of the other things ERSIP we can leverage and bring into it is also cybersecurity. Those two things go very much hand in hand. We take a look at that holistically, not only from an investment of the infrastructure, but also from a logistics perspective. Anything we can do to help with our energy consumption allows us freedom of maneuver. In addition to that, taking full advantage of electrification also related to ERSIP, kind of looking at the whole package, if you will. We're increasing from 1,300 roughly electric vehicles to 1,600 this year. In addition to that, we're putting another 1,200 outlets in. That allows us now to take a look at how we support DMO and EABO in the Pacific, working with Ted and his team. In addition to that, I also think assessment, and something my chief taught me a long time ago, you must be proficient. So we've also incorporated a handbook which we've given to our base commanders. We do exercises now which actually tests the electrical infrastructure to help highlight potential areas for us to invest in. I'll turn it over to Ted now.
Thanks, Ricky. Senator, thanks for the question. So similar to the Navy, we've really appreciated the opportunity to use the ERSIP program to improve the resiliency of some of our installations. I mentioned in my opening statement about the microgrids that we've developed on 5 of our installations right now. Quite a bit of support from the ERSIP program to develop those. And it really improves our operational readiness and our operational resiliency, not only here in CONUS, but also as we move further west into the Pacific at what we would call our advanced naval bases. So we've made pretty good use of the program, 7 projects from FY18 to 22. We've got 1 in FY23 for a microgrid at Bridgeport. And then we've got 5 more in FY24, and we're looking at trying to develop 7 more in FY25. Right. So tremendously valuable. It's been helpful to us. It's not just microgrids. It's also controls, as Admiral Williamson mentioned. So thank you for the opportunity to comment, sir.
Absolutely, and I'm really thrilled to see the use of storage, in particular, within those microgrids. We've come a long way in just a couple of years. So with that, Ranking Member Bozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I'd like to do is trade with Senator Collins.
Thank you very much. I very much appreciate that, Senator Bozeman and Mr. Chairman. Admiral Williamson, this year's budget requests more than $500 million for the third increment of the multi-mission Dry Dock Number 1 extension at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard in Kittery, Maine. This project, I don't have to tell you, it's vitally important to the readiness of the submarine fleet. Beginning in 2024, scheduled Virginia-class maintenance availabilities at the shipyard will exceed its capacity, and failure to complete this project would result in 20 deferred maintenance availabilities through 2040. This project simply must be completed on time, or we will risk our submarines not being available to accomplish their missions. We are faced with high inflation as far as labor costs and construction materials are concerned, and they have an impact on this project. Is the Navy committed to ensuring that this project remains on track and on time?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. We're committed for all the reasons you just said. As we look at it costing, as going forward, applying lessons learned from the first time out the gate, obviously are going to be very important to maintain our ability to stay on scope, stay on cost, and stay on schedule. As we mature our area development plans, as we build our dry docks, as that vision's getting much clearer now, we're beginning to find opportunities to push things to the left without it cause any risk to either maintenance critical path or the SIOP critical path. And so we've taken into account cost for inflation, material cost, cost of labor. We're using third-party estimators and economists now to help us better refine that. Also within our budget, you will also see us ask for the money to make up some of the difference from the projects from 22. But we are committed to that, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm very glad to hear that. As you know, the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard is considered the gold standard among our public shipyards, and we're very proud of the contribution that the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard makes to our Navy and our national security. Mr. Cramer, I just returned from a Senate trip to Kyiv in Ukraine, to Sweden and Finland. So I am particularly interested in the European Defense or Deterrence Initiative. The department's budget request also includes $746 million for infrastructure projects in Europe to help deter Russian aggression against NATO and to reassure our allies. This includes MILCON for 2 training complexes at Grafenwohr, Germany, which I visited in March, to observe the training operations of Army units that deployed in response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. How is the department planning for infrastructure changes that may result from adjustments to our force posture in Europe following Russia's invasion?
Senator, it's a great question. I'll be speaking out of my lane if I talk about force posture, but I do want to extend a thanks to Congress for the past funds that were provided under the EDI, ERI, going way back to 2014. So our ability to surge in Europe today in the current crisis was based on all of those investments that we've done over the last 8 years. And so I think what you'll find is the investments going forward will expand upon previous investments that are going to allow us to then shape the force the way that the Secretary and the President want to do as we go forward. I don't know that we're at the position where we can commit to a force structure or a force posture, but we have capitalized on previous investments that allow us to surge to the point where we're quite successful today. So.
Thank you.
Senator Tester.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the work you and the ranking member do on this committee. Mr. Cramer, your opening statement talked about military housing privatization initiative. Even as privatized housing has been faced with challenges recently, there's still a critical housing shortage for our service members. Does this budget support any new privatized housing projects?
So privatized housing, as you're aware, is the new houses are funded through basic allowance for housing, the private partner, except in the cases where we have some projects, and the Air Force has these mainly, is they have funds within their budget that are going to then support their projects going forward, and that would then support new housing construction at specific bases to support the Air Force. But specifically, the current budget does not envision new houses directly for privatized housing. We do have dollars in there to build DOD-owned housing in the Marine Corps, as General Banta had mentioned, and in the Army and the Air Force. So we do within our own owned inventory.
I'll get to that in a second. So I've heard from many of the secretaries that it's hard to meet the goals of where we want to be as far as force strength and force strength. The housing issue, my guess is it's the same in Arkansas and the same in New Mexico as it is in Montana. There's no houses off base. There's just none. And the houses that are off base, the rents have gone through the roof. So the question is, if we're going to expect or demand that Air Force, Army, Navy, Marine, Coast Guard, the works, meets their end strength, how is it even possible without housing?
So it's as you referenced, Senator, yeah, the housing shortage is not just specific to the department, it's a nationwide issue. And so within the Department of Defense, our another undersecretary office, PNR, actually runs the BAH program, and that's a survey of the rents in order to set that allowance so that we can afford, our service members can afford to rent off post. It doesn't do much for the inventory, and actually to expand the inventory is going to be a couple of years down the road. But we do have a mechanism within to allow to get the right entitlements in service members' pockets. The Secretary did approve some temporary BAH increases prior to the end of last year that'll in certain areas where we saw a high cost of rents. This is the time of the year when we start doing the BAH surveys for next year. So the military installations are part and parcel within the contractors that go out and test that rent. So I know it doesn't help ease any housing crisis today, but it allows the entitlements to match what the projected housing costs are going to be going into next year.
I've got you. I think it's and I appreciate everything that's been done because I think it's stuff that has to be done. I think the problem is we don't have inventory. We just don't have inventory. And if we bring up your counterparts and beat the hell out of them because they don't have their end strength where they are, I think we've really put them in a bind if there's really no place to live. And by the way, they know it. I mean, they know it. And so let's talk about the on-base stuff more because that's where the young service members, single service members live, and that environment for them from a recruitment and a retention standpoint is also very, very important, much less very important for the job that they do and making sure that they're able to do the job that they're assigned. So give me an idea about what's in this budget for the DAOD to improve the living conditions for our young unaccompanied service members.
So I would think.
You can defer it if you.
Yeah, I was going to say, so we do fund within our normal, I'll just start with the top line message, our sustainment, restoration, modernization funds do have funds in there to sustain the inventory. We've put in a number of projects, and General Band had mentioned some for the Marine Corps and the Navy for this panel, but we do have an investment. It's a continual investment in our unaccompanied housing. I'll defer to.
Just before you start, Lieutenant General, so sustainment is important, but growth is also important. So I want you to address both of them if you could.
Thank you, Senator. So the Secretary is correct that we have made investments in both growing our BEQ, Bachelor Enlisted Quarter capacity, but also looking at what will it take to sustain it. Very quickly, a total of 680 barracks across the Marine Corps. The vast majority are actually in pretty decent shape, either Q1 or Q2 on the Facilities Condition Index, and that's about 84% of them. That's not to say that there's more work to do, and we have done work over the years to include investing $3.3 billion from fiscal year 08 to 23. Moving forward, we've got 12 renovations that are underway this year, and then we've got 15 additional renovations planned for fiscal year 23. So as far
And
as
that's just for the Marine Corps, correct?
That's just for
the other services have equivalent or more?
I would defer to the other services,
Okay.
Senator.
We'll assume they are. We'll
Yes,
find
sir.
out.
And then I would just say for the projects in actual new construction, we've got 2 Bachelor Enlisted Quarters in FY2023 over in Japan, one on Kadena Air Base and one on Camp Butler. And then we have requested 4 additional BEQs on our unfunded priority list to help expand capacity at bases at our recruit depots as well as Hawaii.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize.
No worries. Ranking Member Bozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mentioned earlier the many economic factors facing the department in budget development, project execution, such as extreme market volatility and record inflation. Vice Admiral Williamson and Lieutenant General Banta, I'd like to know, one, how these are impacting your fiscal year 23 budget estimates and your plan to address cost increases, and 2, the impacts you're seeing on project execution and what you're doing to mitigate the issues, and very importantly, is there anything that we can do as a committee?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for the question. I'll start with the projects that are in execution now from FY22. We're experiencing somewhere between a 16 to 33% increase due to inflation. We're working very diligently to make sure those projects stay on schedule, but obviously there will be some impacts from that. Projecting forward, how do we handle this going forward? Looking at FY23 projects and beyond, we're estimating right now somewhere between 9 to 17% increase to the price due to interruptions in the supply chain, increased cost of fuel, increased cost of material, increased cost to the workforce. So we're monitoring those very closely. As I said earlier, we're pulling some of the lessons we learned out of SIOP and using third-party assessors and economists to help us stay ahead of these things so that we can plan better. In addition to that, we've also found that by putting more money into planning and designing helps us get closer to cost, schedule, and scope, which will allow us to maintain, stay ahead of those issues. You asked, what would benefit. I think increasing the reprogramming thresholds. I think that would give us greater flexibility to execute the projects, particularly reprogramming within the MILCON to stay on schedule. In addition to that, a lot of projects are also FSRM, OMN related. Multi-year funding, I think, would also allow us not only to deal with inflation, but continuous resolution and things like that. That would give us the flexibility to stay on track. Deb.
Thanks, Admiral. So Admiral Williams and I both draw from the same data sources here from NAVFAC. So the inflation estimates that he referenced, we agree with, and we have the similar concerns. I would say in terms of where it helps us, he specifically mentioned the FSRM and OMMC being a multi-year appropriation for the reasons he said. That would be tremendously helpful, give us more flexibility and the ability to plan and then execute over a long period of time and mitigate the impact of continuing resolutions. So I think that would be helpful. We do have a number of homes that we are currently constructing over on Guam. The area cost factor there is significant, and then compounded by inflation. So there's been a significant cost increase with those that we're looking at as well. Thank you, sir.
If you don't mind, I would just to put a finer point on. So you'd mentioned incremental funding, and that actually helps us then hedge some inflation because we're not having to pay that full bill during high years. Because as most of the data will show, high inflation is always followed by some lower number, and so excess today turns into bid savings later on, and so we can do split funding to account for a lot of that as we go forward. Incremental funding is a definite help going forward.
Very good. Have you gotten any guidance put out by OSD addressing this?
So we're now in trying to analyze as we're looking to 23 because that's the budget in front of us. Right. But the 22 is also going to have an impact on it. So we've done some analysis of Admiral Williamson and General Band had mentioned with NAVFAC's looking at it. Corps of Engineers is also looking at what's the cost of construction. Right. In the A&S side, our acquisition folks are looking at what's the greater cost of growth within all of our programs. Because 22, what we do or do not get done in 22 will affect 23, and right. So we're not only looking at the projections we've done for fiscal year 23, but we have to be informed about what we're going to actually get done this year. And split funding and MILCON allows us to hedge some of that bet, but not all of it. As we said, O&M funds we've got to get all those done this year, and what we don't buy, we then buy next year. So it's a compounding effect.
Right. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. In the interest of getting to the second panel, we're going to skip a second round. But Admiral Williamson, I have a couple of questions for the record regarding the situation at Red Hill, the lack of cost estimates and ongoing assessments, given some of the commitments that have been made there, in particular with the Hawaiian Department of Health. So I'll get you those for the record, and you can get back to me. And with that, we can let our first panel go and ask our second panel to take their seats at the table.
And I think I'll be submitting some too, so we'll give you all some homework to do. So thank you all.
I'd like to welcome our second panel. Representing the Army is Lieutenant General Jason Evans, Deputy Chief of Staff, G9 Installations. From the Air Force, we have Lieutenant General Warren Berry, Deputy Chief of Staff for Logistics, Engineering, and Force Protection, and Mr. Bruce Hollywood, Associate Chief of Operations Officer for the United States Space Force. We will ask our witnesses to make opening statements, beginning with General Evans, followed by General Berry, and then Mr. Hollywood. General Evans, you can proceed with your opening statement.
Chairman Heinrich, Ranking Member Bozeman, and distinguished members of the committee, on behalf of 1 million soldiers and 2.2 million family members, thank you for your continued support of our Army and for supporting our budget request for FY23 and for providing additional $1 billion in funding for key programs such as barracks, child care facilities, housing. The Army's budget for installations is aligned with the priorities set by the Army senior leaders, people, modernization, readiness, alliances, and partnerships. In this year's FY23 budget, we are requesting $8.1 billion for the Army's installation infrastructure. $1.9 billion of that is military construction. $6.2 billion is facilities, sustainment, restoration, and modernization. Our MILCON request is focused on improving soldier and family quality of life. It also includes projects to improve readiness and modernization for all components at various locations throughout the United States. To make the best use of funding allotted to the Army, we are working to balance sustainment, restoration, modernization, and demolition across all components, especially as projects typically have a faster impact on improving our facilities rather than just a pure MILCON solution. We must continue to ensure our soldiers and their families have access to safe and high-quality housing by remaining focused on improving our privatized housing portfolio and by continuing to implement measures to increase the safety, quality, and habitability of the privatized housing by ensuring military privatized housing companies are accountable for project performance. During February of 2022, the Army released a comprehensive climate strategy that is well nested with DoD's Climate Adaptation Plan. The Army Climate Strategy directs actions to enable our force to operate in changing environments, strengthens the resilience of our installations, and increases the capabilities of our force while also reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. We also continue to leverage the Defense Climate Assessment Tool to identify potential hazards caused by climate change and inform our mitigation planning efforts. I appreciate this opportunity to discuss the importance of the Army's military construction initiatives. At every Army installation, we endeavor to take care of soldiers, their families by ensuring access to quality facilities, housing, barracks, and child care. And to do that, we need your continued support by providing timely, adequate, sustainable, and predictable funding so our installations remain ready and resilient and provide the quality of life that our soldiers and families deserve. Again, I appreciate this opportunity and look forward to your questions.
Good afternoon, Chairman Heinrich, Ranking Member Bozeman, distinguished members of this subcommittee. I'm honored to appear before you today to discuss the fiscal year 2023 Air Force military construction and family housing programs. I'd like to begin by thanking this subcommittee first for your steadfast support and generous military construction funding contained within the FY22 Consolidated Appropriations Act. I'm also thankful for the FY22 NDAA technical amendment, which enables us to award over $1 billion of natural disaster recovery projects at Tyndall Air Force Base in the next few months. I look forward to working with the subcommittee on our fiscal year 2023 Air Force military construction budget request and tackling new challenges to improve this vital program. Our nation faces an array of complex challenges in a rapidly evolving global environment. In addition to the threat imposed by pacing adversaries and other non-state actors, transboundary challenges such as climate change also demand our attention. Our fiscal year 2023 military construction budget request supports the 2022 National Defense Strategy by investing in our airmen and their families, accelerating the recapitalization of two legs of the nuclear enterprise, and supporting combatant command infrastructure requirements across the European and the Indo-Pacific theaters. Our FY23 request is consistent with last year's request, and we've taken great strides in process improvements to create a more stable military construction program that will yield an increase in the number of projects awarded in the year of appropriation and better defined cost estimates, reducing potential project delays through reprogramming requests. However, we continue to work through numerous external influences affecting this portfolio, be it from increased global market prices for commodities and labor, ongoing impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic, or from the effects of a changing climate. In the face of these challenges, the Air Force continues to balance risk and installation investment with the necessity to modernize and meet our most critical mission needs. Over time, though, this has resulted in atrophied facilities and infrastructure. In order to mitigate some of this risk, we optimize our use of military construction as well as the operations and maintenance funding accounts. These two funding streams serve as the foundation of sustainable air and Space Force installations through a combination of well-timed military construction projects and continued facility sustainment, restoration, and modernization funding. We are able to recapitalize when required and sustain through day-to-day maintenance and repair in order to maximize the lifespan of those facilities. Lastly, while we remain focused on the health of our infrastructure, we keep in mind that our installations are more than just where our airmen work. It is where many of them and their families call home. Our fiscal year 2023 request includes $678 million for efforts which directly support service members and their families, including housing construction improvements, operations and maintenance and privatized housing oversight, and the continued construction of our basic military training dormitories at Joint Base San Antonio Lackland. Infrastructure investment in our critical quality of life facilities plays a vital role in ensuring the well-being of our airmen and is integral to mission success. Again, thank you for your continued support and the opportunity to testify today. We look forward to your questions.
Good afternoon, Chairman Heinrich, Ranking Member Bozeman, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss Space Force installations and our military construction program. The capabilities and benefits provided in and through space are vital to our way of life and a critical prerequisite to effective military operations across all other domains. Over the past 2 decades, the space domain has shifted from a benign environment to one that is contested, where our adversaries are increasingly active and disruptive. We are our nation's newest military service, purpose-built to organize, train, and equip space forces to protect America's interest in the space domain and provide critical capabilities to the joint force in accordance with the 2022 National Defense Strategy. Our installation investments through military construction and operations and maintenance funding are especially vital to the Space Force mission because the bulk of our forces are employed in place, and our installations serve as our power projection platforms. Our Space Force bases and stations also serve as home to many of our guardian, supporting airmen and their families. We work ceaselessly to provide them a comfortable and safe place to live. As one of 2 services within the Department of the Air Force, and in line with the department's guiding principle of one team, one fight, we will remain partnered with the Air Force as it provides foundational installation support to the Space Force. To remain a lean and mission-focused service, as directed by Congress and in accordance with our Chief of Space Operations planning guidance, the Space Force will continue to rely on the Air Force for infrastructure, logistics, security, medical services, and a host of other support functions at our bases. Formal agreements and implementation plans are in place to codify stakeholder roles and responsibilities. We plan resilience into our mission operations and protect the guardians, airmen, and families stationed in locations at risk from severe weather. Additionally, we're active partners in the department's facility and infrastructure readiness initiatives and participate in the energy and water resilience conversations being discussed across the department. This past year, the Space Force developed an independent process for prioritizing requirements through a deliberate, collaborative planning effort that accounts for our operational and community priorities. We are focused on infrastructure improvements in areas to reduce risk to mission while simultaneously reducing risk to the force by improving the quality of life for our guardians, supporting airmen, and their families. Our installation investments through the military construction program and our operations and maintenance accounts, and our collaborative relationships across the Department of the Air Force, especially with Lieutenant General Berry's office, are critical to performing our mission and to the well-being of our guardians, supporting airmen and their families. Thank you for your time and continued support. I am truly honored for the opportunity to testify today, and I look forward to our dialogue.
Thank you, Mr. Hollywood. For General Evans and General Berry, in our fiscal year 22 bill, we included $125 million for design and both minor and major construction of laboratory infrastructure to modernize our research, development, testing, and evaluation base. This funding helped buy down unfunded requirements at installations across the country, including at White Sands Missile Range. Still, we know there to be a significant need for such funding. As it pertains to military construction, how are you identifying and prioritizing laboratory infrastructure?
Sir, thank you for the question. Laboratories, as you articulate, are very important. We have 2 laboratories in the Walter Reed Dietrich area that DHA will fund for critical medical research. We've got 2 laboratories on the Oipol for Vicksburg and Redstone, and then we have another 5 in the FIDEP, so a total of, I think, 8 there, sir. So this is vitally important to us.
General Barry.
So, Mr. Chairman, in the FY22 Section 129, the Air Force got about $25 million of the $125 million that was appropriated. From that $25 million, we have in place, we're still working the spend plan, but it looks like we'll be able to get to about 7 test projects that we will do planning and design across the Air Force to get after some critical capabilities for the test and evaluation enterprise. I think if you look across our FYDP as well, you'll see that, for example, just in hypersonic test infrastructure across the FY23 FYDP, we'll put about $336 million into that test infrastructure. Not all facilities, obviously. There are other things that the test infrastructure needs, but that is a huge investment for us and recognizing the importance of that mission set.
For General Evans, the Army Climate Strategy released earlier this year lays out a pretty ambitious objective of installing a microgrid on every installation by 2035. Indeed, most of the ERSIP funding for the Army over the past few years has focused on microgrids. How are you determining the order in which installations are prioritized, and what are some of the most significant challenges that you anticipate facing in trying to get to that objective?
Sir, so right now, the installations through their internal energy and water plans do the assessment and determine the criticality or the need for the microgrids. We did 5 last year. We're scheduled to do 12 ERSA programs this year, 11 of which are microgrids, and then another 5 next year. So we're absolutely invested in this technology. As was mentioned before, it's good for energy conservation. We think it has applicability to the electrification as we pursue electrification of the vehicle fleet. So, we're all in.
It's my understanding that there's design funding included in the ERSIP request this year for a microgrid at White Sands Missile Range. Is that something you can confirm?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We do have approximately $29 million for planning and design for a microgrid at White Sands Missile Range.
Excellent. Mr. Hollywood, last year I included design funding. The Space Rapid Capabilities Office at Kirtland Air Force Base, and I'm pleased that full funding for the construction project has been identified in the FYDP, and hope design is able to get underway soon. I understand that the Space Force now has dedicated obligation authority within the Air Force top line. As the Space Force carves out its own military construction program, could you discuss how you're identifying, developing, and prioritizing those projects within that program?
Thank you for that question, sir, and thank you very much for the funding for the Space RCO. That's going to be an important piece of our technology and building going forward. As we work within the Department of the Air Force MILCON, it's a single funding stream, and that gives the Secretary flexibility to perhaps give us more on those times when we need a little bit more and to balance it across. But, sir, the way that we prioritize is by trying to reduce the risk to mission and effectiveness of the mission by looking at resilience, readiness, and our training and infrastructure, and then by reducing the risk to our people by working on our quality of life initiatives.
Ranking Member Bozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I asked this question to the first panel, and I'd really like to get your input also because it's so very important. We're really just in a unique time right now. How are economic factors such as extreme market volatility and record inflation impacting your fiscal year 23 budget request and project execution? What's your plan to address the cost increases? And very, very importantly, what can we do to help you?
Sir, thank you for the question. We've experienced over the last year about a 24% increase for MILCON projects, which is really attributed to labor, the supply line, and materials. Now we're experiencing with a 6% increase in fuel, approximately 30%. We work closely with the Corps engineers. What this has done is We're no longer having the contractors hold their bids. Before, we have them hold their bids for about 6 months until we got the authorized threshold reprogramming. That's no longer the case. So what you'll see in the 23 Oipol is about 22 cost to completes. That's about half of the 46 projects, and that's a result of the cost increases. We believe, like the Navy, that we can work with your staff and OSD to probably get the authorized threshold reprogramming raised and probably try to reduce that time to hold the contractors in place to get the bid on the MILCON.
Very good.
Senator, thanks for the question. I think my answer will mimic a lot of what my Navy and Army counterparts have said, right? So certainly continuing resolutions are not helpful for us because it delays our ability to advertise an award, and in construction business, time is money. And that does tend to lead us to higher bids than what we would have originally anticipated.
That's definitely noted.
Yes, sir. Clearly, as I mentioned in my opening comments, we're doing a lot more planning and design, being much more rigorous in our process for planning and design to get projects to 35% so that they're more mature. So when we come to you for funding, we have a higher confidence level that what we're going to build will cost what we think it will cost. But without a doubt, there are inflationary pressures on us today that we haven't seen before. And while we have taken a large portion of our professional engineers, about 1,200 so far, and put them through some cost estimating courses and improve their capabilities there to do cost estimating, sometimes you can't predict all of those inflationary pressures, and they are real. Steel is up 110%, aluminum is up about 34%, and it just comes to roost right when the contractors give their bids or cost to complete, as General Evans said. I'll echo what Admiral Williamson said as well. I think it may be time to look at the reprogramming thresholds. I think the last time we did a reprogramming threshold change was in 1982. For reference, I was a high school senior. I am not that anymore. I think gas was $1.30 a gallon. So it's not hard to exceed a $2 million threshold in today's environment, given the complexity, and then add to it the increasing pressures from inflation. It tends to eat into those project costs pretty quickly. So certainly I think the Air Force would welcome a conversation about looking at those reprogramming thresholds again. Thank you.
Very good.
Sir, there's really not a whole lot to add to what's been said. We benefit from all the hard work the Air Force has done in recent years on refining their bidding process to get that as right as it can be before they even begin construction. But any help with multi-year funding, with incremental funding, and with increasing the thresholds would be extremely helpful. Even as small as we are, we've got projects that have been impacted by having to come back and be delayed during a reprogramming action.
Very good. Thank you. Lieutenant General Evans, over the last few years, there have been multiple issues with privatized housing, really following up on Senator Tester's remarks earlier. And you and I have had some great discussions about this. I know that nobody cares more about this than you do, taking care of the men and women that are serving. But again, privatized housings and barracks. In the last few weeks, Army's had some tough, pointy questions at other hearings on their quality of life investments or lack thereof. Can you share the Army's investment strategy and what you're doing to improve housing for soldiers?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. So we talk about housing. We talk about both privatized housing, Army-owned housing, and then barracks. And that's the number one priority under the Quality of Life Initiative for the Army. We've currently, for barracks, we've got a 10-year MILCON R&M plan that will address over 1,600 barracks. And to date, from 21 to 22, that will be about $10.3 billion. We're about $2.3 billion into that now. We've got 2 barracks in the program for 23, along with 78 R&M projects, because we believe the R&M and sustainment is just as important as the military construction. For the privatized housing, we continue to hold ourselves accountable, as well as the private partners, for performance. We've implemented the 18 Bill of Rights across the 44 installations that have privatized housing. Right now, we have a couple partners that have invested about $3 billion to build new homes. That work has started for Lend-Lease in places like Fort Hood, about 586 homes, in places like Fort Campbell. For Army-owned housing, which the preponderance, about 93% of that is overseas, We're investing about $1.5 billion in that in much-needed places like the Vicenza housing area. And so to add to that, I'd like to throw in also the child care, because that's an important facility investment or a capacity issue that we have in the Army. And we thank the committee for their support for 3 of the child care facilities in 21 that are in high weight areas or high demand areas like Alaska and 2 in Hawaii. And then last year on the Oipol, you gave us 1 for Leavenworth and 1 for Fort Knox, and then we have 7 more in the program. So we're very appreciative of the support of the committee, and we think we're on a good path to increase capacity with child care, along with incentivizing staff, incentivizing family child care homes by providing $1,000 for people who get in that. The fee assistance program, that monthly will raise and the fee assistance for folks who take advantage of that from $1,500 to $1,700. And so we're ecstatic about where we're going with increasing the capacity for all of those.
Good. That's a good story. Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And General Evans, I was glad to hear your response to Senator Bozeman's question here. Obviously, housing, key priorities, but the focus on child care and what we're doing to provide for our families there. The number 1 item listed on Army's unfunded priorities list is a new multi-purpose field house physical fitness facility. I think we recognize, maybe it's not so apparent in a place like Arkansas where your weather is more decent most times of the year, but we require a level of readiness, and you can't just be out jogging when it's 40 below and getting the fitness training that you need without appropriate facilities. And so I appreciate the focus and the attention that has been made to this field house or this fitness facility. We're all very, very targeted on what we're seeing with alarming rates of suicide, and we recognize that when we provide for certain quality of life initiatives, whether it's childcare, whether it's fitness centers, these are just not nice to haves. This is part of what our soldiers need. I had an opportunity at a recent SAC-D hearing to hear from the Secretary as well as the Chief of the Staff of the Army on the importance of this particular facility up north. And I asked the question about why this fitness facility is needed, why it's number 1 on the unfunded priority list. And also I asked about the price tag, because we sit here on the Appropriations Committee and it's $99 million, and that figure will get the attention of folks. And I would like you to, for the record, provide to this committee why it is your number 1 unfunded priority, and to the issue of cost. We recognize that it's just more expensive to build up north, but I don't want people to think that this is some gold-plated Taj Mahal. What we're doing is we're building a necessary facility, but I would like you to speak to that if you would.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the question. First of all, I had the opportunity to travel to Alaska during the winter months with the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army.
It's kind of dark.
Yes, ma'am. It's kind of dark there for a longer period of time than it's kind of dark here, and it's the extreme weather conditions do not lend themselves to soldiers performing physical exercise outside. The Physical Fitness Center gets directly to soldier resiliency as well as fitness and the ability to be ready, combat ready, physical ready, because you can perform the Army combat physical fitness test indoors. The price tag, ma'am, the area cost factor is much higher there in Alaska, because only from early spring to early fall, when that's the only time that you can really conduct the construction. We're in a planning and design phase now, and we anticipate construction in early 24 and completion, and we're just ecstatic about this. This is the Chief of Staff's number 1 priority, is that physical fitness center, because it gets directly to our number 1 priority of people and supporting soldiers. And you mentioned the issues we've had up there, and we think this is something that gets right at that in terms of resiliency and fitness for the soldiers.
appreciate that and know that we're looking forward to seeing that completion. Let me turn to you, Lieutenant General Barry. With Eielson Air Force Base now home to the 54 F-35s, where we're looking at areas within the MILCON budget request, and there's an absence, in my view, when it comes to increased storage and coverings to protect from these winter climates. You not only your soldiers can't train out there, but it's tough on those airplanes. It's tough on the aircraft. We're going to get 4 additional KC-135s in addition to the F-35s. But what I'm hearing is that we just don't have enough hangars and storage to safely accommodate this influx of aircraft and equipment. I'm told that Air Force often uses off-base civilian storage to rent space for large exercises when we have things like Arctic Edge, but it's becoming more challenging. I guess it's less reliable as the civilian companies are increasingly utilizing their own space. So I don't know if you can speak to whether or not the Air Force currently has a plan to address this shortfall through future military construction projects, if you're looking at the issue of hangar and storage space in the Arctic and what you can share here.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. I'll say in the 2017 appropriations, we had $161 million to build 2 16-bay weather shelter facilities for the F-35s. Those are in place. There are another 18 parking locations indoors for F-35. And when necessary, the wing can clear out some more space to make room for another 4, which handles all 54 of the F-35. So from what we see, we don't see a shortfall of storage locations for housing F-35s indoor. If you're hearing something different, we'll probably need to go reconcile that, and we'll go back up to the folks at Eielson to make sure we have the same site picture. But that's how we view the situation up there at Eielson. We also had in FY20 a project to build storage facilities for the support equipment that goes for the F-35s as well. So that project is underway to provide some indoor storage for those support equipment requirements for the F-35. KC-135 will have to take a closer look and see what that requirement will be. Those airplanes won't start arriving right now until FY23. So we'll go back to Eielson and make sure that we have that ground covered as well. And then as far as Arctic Edge, I will have to get back to you on that one. I had not heard that as a concern for off-base storage for that particular exercise. But we'll go back up and make sure that that's squared that corner as well.
I appreciate that, and particularly as it relates to the KC-135s there, and just anticipating their arrival. But thank you for that. Mr. Chairman, I'm out of time, but I do want to just note to Mr. Hollywood my appreciation that this year's budget request does include this dormitory to house 84 Guardians at Clear Air Force Station. I think it was recognized in the budget that this place, Clear, is one of the most strategically important installations in our country. We know that, but we also have to have a place to house our Guardians there at Clear Space Force Station. The community just doesn't have a lot of housing, and I certainly know that, and I'm sure that you do as well. So we were pleased to see that addition.
Thank you for your support, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hovind.
You the chairman now? I thought you were the ranking member. When did you switch parties?
Behave.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first question is for General Evans. We expected the Jamestown Readiness Center, which is the 817 engineer company, Sapper company, we expected that they would be in the FYDP. Can you tell me how come they're not and when they're going to be?
Thank you for the question, sir. So we prioritize based on the Army senior leaders and the top line. I will go back to see where that project is for 24, sir.
Yeah, that was their number one ask, so we need to get them in the FIDEP. So I'd appreciate that very much if
Yes,
you
sir.
would. And then also the line of communications bridge. Can you tell me where you are in terms of the LOCB training capability? Are you familiar with that?
Sir, I'm not, but I can get you the answer to that question.
Okay, because we had included in the appropriations bill report language directing you to establish a training pipeline for that program.
Yes,
so if you would check on that and let us know, will you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, General. General Barry, Minot Air Force Base is the only base that has a dual nuclear mission, both the bombers, B-52 bombers with the Alchem nuclear weapon, but also then the ICBMs. And so we need a new weapons generation facility. And I guess my question is, where are we in terms of the design and then getting that new facility underway?
Yes, Senator, I think we agree with you. There is a need for a weapons generation facility at Minot. It is not yet in our FIDEP. As we discussed, I think last year, the complexity of this particular weapons generation facility having to deal with both the large missiles and the bomber make it a uniquely difficult program and project to design and then build. So our strategy is to learn the lessons that we can learn from the big missile bases, i.e. F.E. Warren. We've learned some lessons in that design on blast containment and fire suppression. Those are informing future designs so that we can correct those and make sure that we have robust designs in the future ones. And then with the bomber bases such as Barksdale, again, learning from those construction efforts as to what will be a good design for something that gets very complex because of Minot, which will have both missions. So we will get to it. We are committed to do a WGF at Minot. But our strategy is to learn those lessons first.
Yeah, but you're actually moving forward on both. So it seems to me, unless you tell me you're going to build somehow either a deficient facility for the ICBMs or a deficient facility for the nuclear bombers, I don't understand why you don't use those designs and proceed with ours.
It
seems like more of a reason to push it back on the fight.
No, actually, we are going to use those designs to inform the Minot design. So, for example,
starting when?
We don't have it right now in the FIDEP. So I think we still need to mature the design on Barksdale and Ellsworth to understand what that facility looks like and what a good design is. So when we did F.E. Warren, as I said, we learned some lessons there with blast containment and fire suppression that actually changed the design at Malmstrom. And so those lessons, I think, are very important for us to learn before we start putting designs together for a complex facility like North Dakota.
The ranking member here, now acting chairman, I guess, and I worked very hard to support the B-21. So now you're putting weapons generation facilities in the bases that will get the B-21, which moved them ahead of Minot Air Force Base, wherein we're re-engineering the B-52 as part of that whole process, but which will carry that same weapons system. Now they're all ahead of us in terms of getting the weapons generation facility, as well as the other missile bases. And I keep getting these rationales that we're going to learn from everybody else. Well, why don't we start building something at the Minot Air Force Base and learn from the Minot Air Force Base? We can't be, we're the only dual nuclear base and we're behind everybody else and we keep getting pushed back. That's not acceptable.
Senator, what I can do is I can offer to come talk to you and have our team come talk to you about the lessons that we are learning and why we think that's a good strategy. We'd be happy to dive into those details for you.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Thank you. On the Gray Wolf, I guess this one you are progressing on, and I do thank you for that. And if you could, please give me an update on the hangar for the Gray Wolf helicopter. Also, worked very hard with Senator Tester to make sure we funded new helicopters for those missile fields, so we need a place to house them. The current Hueys are older than the fantastic Air Force pilots that are flying them.
Yes, sir. Sadly true. The facility is currently out for bid, and so those bids should close the end of May for that facility. They'll go through the source selection process. We think that'll be done later in the summer. Unfortunately, I think last year I told you that we were trying to reconcile the bids because it was coming in higher than we thought for some of the inflationary pressures that we talked
And we've
about.
added, after the first 66 million, we added
did.
another $5+ million.
We did, and we think we're going to
Your
be higher than
appropriation.
that. And we think we're going to be higher than that. So I'll drive another reprogramming, much to the inflationary pressures
We'll
that we
work
talked
with you to
about.
get it, but you've got to prioritize it.
Yep, sir, we will. We will absolutely prioritize that. But we expect it to be awarded in March of '23, and with the first helicopter coming in FY27, we think that's pretty good timing. But we are committed to that.
And again, this is the only dual nuclear base. We do
Yes, sir.
need some more security work on the front gate, which is another thing we're working with you on.
Yes, sir. And we'll continue to work with the installation commander up there to understand
and
those
I think
requirements
you
and
are-
make sure they get programmed.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That being said, can I just thank all of you and tell you how much we appreciate you and all you do. You do an incredible job, and we really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, thank you. On behalf of Chairman Heinrich and myself, we want to thank both panels of witnesses and the senators who participated today in today's hearing. I look forward to working together on this year's appropriations to ensure we are providing the Department service members and their families with the military construction and family housing resources that they need. And I know you all are totally committed in that regard also. Finally, we will keep the hearing record open for 1 week. Committee members who would like to submit written questions for the record should be able to do so by 5 o'clock p.m. Wednesday, May 25th. We appreciate the department responding to them in a reasonable period of time. And again, thank you all very much for being here. Thank you for all you represent. With that, we're adjourned.